Mexiquense Radio.
La entrevista.
Mexiquense Radio.
Amigos de Mexiquense Radio, estoy ya listo para platicar en este momento con Elliott Williams, quien es parte de una de las bandas más importantes del Reino Unido, sí o sí, en este momento en el planeta Tierra. Editors es una de esas fuerzas gigantescas. Man, it's a pleasure to have you here in the show. And I've been telling to the audience that you are now one of the most important bands in the UK. And
Thank
that's,
you very much. That's very kind.
and that's great, man. You're about to turn 20. That's exciting, man.
It's very exciting. It's a little scary. You know, time, flies. I guess when you're having fun, and we still are having fun. We love making music and we love being a band and being creative together. So I think that's the most important thing.
I've been asking you about this new album. Is exciting as the previous launches and previous releases of albums and tours? Is the same emotion?
Yeah, I think, it's slightly different this time because we have a new member joining the band, Ben Black Mass. So yeah, it gets more exciting. You know, there's quite a lot of new things happening in Editor's World with this new record. So getting ready to release that and start a tour with a new person is daunting, but it's also incredibly exciting because we have some new plans on the horizon for a live show and stuff. So yeah, it's good.
You always surprises us with your music. I mean, you always do something different, but you always also take risk in your songs. But this moment and the incorporation of Benjamin makes an exciting leap. Do you feel that something changed with this incorporation of Benjamin?
Yeah, definitely. I think, for the last 6 records, predominantly the songs have always started with Tom. So he would write chords and a melody and some vocals and then bring it to the band. Whereas for this record, the first time ever, it started with Ben. So that is a massive difference in the way that we create music. To have someone else come in and start something is, it's a big change. But when we were initially writing with Ben, we didn't know whether it was going to be an editor's record. So it kind of allowed Tom massively to be a lot freer and express himself outside of the pressures of what editors is to a degree. And that's kind of, I think, why we've ended up with this slightly, I guess, a lot of people are saying that it's a braver record or, it's slightly different. But I think it's hard. It's still an editor's record, even though it started with Ben or whatever, which is why it did become an editor's record.
I don't know if it's braver, but it feels really good. It feels really, really powerful, this new album. Let me ask you about this EBM album. Do you feel it's a reinvention? I mean, from the back room to this point, how much have you grown? How, as human beings and as musicians, there is a change. How do you feel it as human beings? Do you feel more responsible for the music that you do? Do you feel more free? Do you feel a different perspective?
I mean, it's from the back rooms to now it's a long time ago. And I think, as you said, like, editors have always taken risks and we've always evolved and tried to do something different. So I think, of course, we feel different from, I've been in the band for 10 years now. The band's been around for 20 years. And even the 3 records that I've made, I think our mentality is always switched on every record because that's how we keep each other excited. And it's always about pushing ourselves forward. We don't really think about too much about the audience or what has come before. So it's always about progress with editors, I think. We're never trying to repeat ourselves because I think the band realized very early on, especially after the success of the back room, that everything that you do is a moment in time. It's, it's distilled into a record and people have emotions that are attached to those records. It's very hard to replicate something again and again and again. And even if we tried to make the back room, I think it would be a total failure to do that now. We just wouldn't be able to recapture that moment. So you're always trying to make different moments in your career. And some people are going to like them and some people are not going to like them. And, I think as time's gone on, we've been able to relax and accept that your audience can be slightly fluid and people will stick with you for the whole time, or people might enjoy this record or not this record so much. But that's kind of what being a band with longevity is about. And they're the bands that we've kind of always loved, bands like The Cure or REM, who've been able to navigate, this industry by doing what they feel creatively satisfies them. They've never stayed still or been stagnant. And I think that's like a massive part of what Editors is now.
And always an album is like a picture of the moment of the band.
Yeah, exactly.
So you are really strong in this moment because this album is really, really strong. It's really
we feel strong. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about these EDM songs. I like all, but let me tell you that my favorite is Silence. It's like wow. It starts slow and then wow. It's really a nice song. Tell me, where does it born? How does it born?
So this is the only song on the record that originally came from Tom. And we kind of worked on everything else before we went to a studio because, we made the majority of this record during the pandemic and a lot was done over emails and in isolation from each other. And then when we could, we got in a studio together to work. And we were feeling that the record is very intense. And we sort of felt that we really wanted a moment of sort of sparseness, even though Silence becomes this kind of big, epic, brooding thing. I think when we were working on it, we were thinking, let's have like a moment, a breather, because this record is so kind of full on and intense that we just wanted some like silence for a bit, really. But it's a song that Tom, I think, is kind of the only song that really references the pandemic in a lot of ways. It's kind of that feeling of missing life, really. But yeah, I think it's one of my favorite songs on the record as well. And we put it together quite quickly in the studio. We kind of had not really much direction for it, but it just seemed to slowly come together in this kind of brooding, I guess, epic soundscape in the end.
It's massive. Let's talk about Strawberry Lemonade. It has this special power, but not only in the music, also in the lyrics. And I want to ask you about how much importance, how do you this balance between this intensity that you talk in music, but also the intensity and the power in the lyrics? How do you do this balance, this 50-50?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak too much for Tom, but my feeling as his bandmate and making this record, I think he's been a little bit open, like say politically, than he's been before. And with the song like Strawberry Lemonade, it kind of really felt like it nailed on the tone of what a lot of people were feeling at this kind of time, especially in the country that we live in post Brexit and living under a conservative government for so many years, that there's a kind of an underlying tension that's just bubbling within England at the moment. And I think this is the first time that Tom's really brought some of that to life in his lyrics. And I'm sure he will not admit to that or tell you about it. He likes to be quite secretive about his lyrics, and he doesn't like to put too much of his own interpretation to it, because I think we're such a international band that you always want people to draw their own feelings and emotion from his words rather than kind of tell you exactly what to feel. It's more of a general feeling. I think on this record, and that's my feelings. Maybe that's just because I'm interpreting it in the way that I felt while we were making the record. But we all tend to have a similar political view, so I'm sure that he's feeling that as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's like a tailor suit. You
Yeah.
made you made perfect suits for everyone in the world.
And that's for
Um,
me, that's what great lyricists can do. They can speak to you directly. It doesn't, no matter where you are in the world, and no matter what you're feeling, if you can relate to something that a singer is saying, it's extremely powerful.
yeah, I have the feeling that this album it's gonna become a classic. There's no other way. It is a classic, an instant classic. But let me ask you about how difficult, uh, from the very first moment that you get together and said we're going to make a new album, to the point that you are about to launch the record.
Yeah.
It was difficult. How easy? How difficult was it?
Well, it was incredibly complicated. I think this might be the most complicated logistically record we've ever made in some ways, because the record came out in a very strange way. We were just before the pandemic, we were booked to do a festival show in Belgium where we were going to do one night headlining as a traditional editor's set of the records that we've been playing. And at the time we were touring the best of. And then the festival asked us to headline again on the second night, but to do something entirely different. And we'd spoke about doing maybe an acoustic performance and stuff like that, but we felt that we'd done those kind of things a lot. And then we discussed, potentially doing something with Ben Blank Mass, who we worked with before, making Violence. And the idea was maybe that we would try and transform some classic editors' songs into a more industrial electronic, almost like a techno kind of club set. Obviously, that didn't happen. The pandemic came in, but we'd already started working a little bit with Ben, myself, Tom, and Justin, kind of throwing some ideas of what could, happen with editor's song. And we tried to work on a cover. And then when the pandemic happened, we sort of said, well, this might happen next year. So why don't we try and write an original song for this festival set? And we tried it. And the first track that we wrote was Karma Climb. And then we had that and we kind of like, oh, this is interesting. This is kind of exciting. We're not doing anything. We're all sat here at home, like twiddling our thumbs. Why don't we do another one? And then that came through. And then it's like, why don't we do another one? And then that came through. And then, kind of over the course of a couple of months, we had, 6 songs. And at that time, we were still not 100% sure whether it was going to be an editor's album or something different. Russ and Ed weren't involved necessarily at that point either. So it's quite complex because you're kind of, we're making this record totally isolated from each other. Me and Ben are just sending kind of Ableton sessions kind of across the internet. It was like receiving like a pen pal's letter every kind of week, opening it up and going, oh, what's this is cool. All right, I'm going to add a load of stuff to this. And then you'd send it back. Justin and Tom would add things. So we got to the point where we had 6 or 7 songs, and then decided once we could, we'd get in a studio with Ed and Russ and we'd make this thing an editor's record. And I think as the process was going along, we were all getting more and more excited about, I think how it felt like a really exciting record and a place to be in. I think editors have been writing, we tend to veer towards more kind of sometimes more miserable music or slower paced songs, especially the older that we get, we tend to slow it down. Whereas Ben is he likes things very fast. So to have someone come in and inject, I guess, those kind of tempos that the band was working on with at the back room was kind of like a breath of fresh air again. And once we got Ed and Russ in the studio and they were playing along, it was like, man, this feels like, it kind of feels like kind of a definitive editor's record to us, really.
Like the first time again.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. I think, and there was a synergy. We went back. One of the only studios that we could get in was the studio where the band made the back room. That was kind of like a nice coincidence as well to get Ed and Russ back in that live room and playing at the speed that they were when they were kids. Yeah, it was great.
Let's talk about Mexico. Let's talk about the Mexican people, the Mexican audience. How many people of Mexico, how many fans of Mexico do you know through social media? Do they write to you? Do they tell things to you? Do they build stories about your songs?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, we get a lot of messages about it, and it's super exciting. I mean, I think we all as a band wish that we could come to Mexico way more often than we do. And we're always trying to work out ways to make it possible. I think our aim is to really get there and do some club shows this tour. And hopefully, maybe there's festivals like Corona Capital or something that we can get on to make it a bit easier to come and play. But I think our love for Mexico runs fairly deep. We've always had brilliant times there, and we're always very excited when we get the opportunity to come and play there. And as I said, I think we wish it could be more.
And you know that you are not just well known, but you are really a loved band here in Mexico. We are passionate people that loves your music. Yes or yes. Cool. There is no in between. We love Editors and your music from the very first album. I wanna thank you for your time, for this great conversation, and I wanna ask you one last favor. If you could present one of the tracks, maybe the new single from this EVM album, it will be great. I will play it so we can sing together with the audience.
So Karma Climb.
Yeah.
Hello, this is Elliott from Editors, and you are listening to our new single Karma Climb on Mexiquense Radio.